Hello and welcome to our Test Automation in Medical Devices webinar. I am Mike Felice. I will be your host for today and am joined by two experts in the industry. And once upon a time, a long time ago, I was also an expert in this industry, but I am no longer an expert in this industry. I'm allowed to chime in if we mention something from like 2003, maybe five. Then I'm allowed to chime in, but otherwise I'm going to keep quiet. Uh, so we'll be talking about test automation and medical devices today in our webinar. Really excited to have our two panelists here as well. Before we get started, I did want to mention that, our webinar is brought to you by PulseForward. We help medical device companies that are startup or well established with all of their engineering needs, from system software architects to usability engineers and everything in between. When it comes to this presentation, we help a lot with test automation, quality engineers, those that are in that quality space. So if you need some engineering, PulseForward can help you do that and get more information at pulseforwardmed.com. With that, we'll be on to our webinar. First, I wanted to have our panelists introduce themselves so we get to know them better. Tanvir, can we please have you introduce yourself and give us a little background on where you're at today and where you've been?
Sure. Hi, my name is Abdul Tanvir. I go by Tanvir mostly. Uh, I am currently working at Medtronic since last 6 years almost, and I have been in different companies. Like I work for Health Partners, I work for Best Buy, all in the automation side. I work for other medical device company named Sensonics, and it has been a learning curve during all these transitions, but I ended up staying at Medtronic for a long time now. Uh, at Medtronic, I work for pelvic health department, which is based off of Minnesota, in Fridley. And we are working on anything and everything related to pelvic right now.
Awesome. Tanvir, can you maybe talk a little bit about some of the tools that you're using at Medtronic or just kind of ones that you're currently using?
So I think since I joined Medtronic, I have been using different tools for different projects. Start from different languages. Starts from C, like .NET, C++, Objective-C, all the embedded languages as well, like Python, for example. We have a lot of frameworks written in Java and all of that. And as the medical device company based on giving people access to their devices, we work on a lot of platforms where we include mobile phones or tablets or Windows computers as well in some cases. So I've worked in all different tools, starting from uh, Android automation to iOS automation to Windows automation. So all of that. Currently, the current project that I'm working on is we have developed our own operating system, but we are taking help of iOS tooling, like for example, Appian and stuff. So that is what I'm working on right now. And I think throughout the pelvic health teams, we have different teams working on different tooling as well, similar to iOS and Android as
Great, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, I'm Brian Finlay. I've worked in medical devices for 25 years, over 25 years. I've worked at Boston Scientific, Medtronic, Guidant, and a number of startup companies and diabetes and neuromodulation as well, as well as the cardiac rhythm management work I did at Boston Scientific and Medtronic. Um, Yeah, so we've employed a lot of automated testing in projects at each of these companies.
Awesome. No, that's great. Well, let's dive into some of our topics here. The first topic that we'll be talking about, roughly five or six topics in this webinar, is why do we have automation in medical device and V&V? Love to maybe have Brian kick us off here, and we'll talk a little bit about why automation.
Sure. Yeah. You know, there's always when you're working with startups, especially, there's always a schedule pressure. And so sometimes it's easy to start off with manual testing. And then what that means is you have to repeat that manual testing uh, a lot, and that takes time. Um, so an alternative that I try to encourage from the beginning is automated testing as much as possible. I mean, there's limits to pragmatically to how much you can automate, but what that allows us to do is after we've run the test once, we're able to rerun it often, and that's used in formal verification and even validation efforts. In software development, I mean, it's actually pretty much, I think, the norm now to do continuous integration slash continuous deployment, CI/CD. And in that situation, you have usually unit tests running automatically, but sometimes also some level of integration test. So every time you check in code or on a nightly basis, the test will run automatically and tell you uh, if you've broken anything in the software. And it's really even sort of I'd say it's really indispensable because it makes it very difficult to refactor if you don't have that kind of automated test suite. So automating, taking that on to like formal verification and formal validation is really a natural extension of CI/CD practices. But it can have some challenges because you have to uh, make it work with the hardware that you're testing, the medical device itself.
Oh,
Yeah, I agree. I think I would like to add on that is I don't know why my video got turned off. Turn it on again. Yeah, I completely agree with Brian here that the pressure of the delivery is so big because we have so many products in pipeline. Every single time we see at the pipeline, we see that okay, we wanted to uh, release these products so that we can have more cash flow. For almost every company, I think that's the mentality of program managers or program directors that they would like to finish the development, finish the testing, and deploy it as soon as possible. Uh, and doing that, it's good for the company, but it ends up having issues when we try to do the quality check for the product, and we might end up missing something. So that's where the automation comes in the picture, especially for medical devices, because it's a very patient-focused industry that we have to care about how patient is going to react to the device which we are introducing in a human body. So we have to do really, really rigorous testing for that. And to do that by human effort, it will take a long time, repeatedly putting the device under performance pressure and making a lot of calls to uh, same interface to make sure that it does not break with a lot of load on it. So to do that, the automation comes in the picture of making sure that we are testing it to the limits. Uh, and for delivery as well, I think automation helps to reduce the B&B time because the validation and verification, what we are trying to do on the devices or on the applications which we are working on, the software applications, the regression, it consists of any smaller app as well. The regression will consist of at least 300 to 400 test cases. And to execute that through a manual way, it will take, I don't know, about 10 people for a month. So that's a lot of resources you need for a long time. That will increase the amount of money you're spending on the product. So the returns have to be really good, first thing. Second is when you introduce automation testing, all this work will be done by automation nodes using GitLab or Jenkins or any cloud-based environment, which can perform every single step what a human should be performing. So you reduces that. And then whenever you're using any of the application for iOS or Android, you always have to update it depending on what kind of iOS version these companies will be releasing. Android will have a new Android version. iOS will have a new iOS version every single year. So you will be doing maintenance releases to make sure your product is working very well with these new iOS versions. And to repeat the same process of 10 engineers for 1 month, you have too many releases to do. So that's where you have this regression suites available, which will kick off as soon as there's a new version of application available in the artifact queue somewhere. Then you'll perform all the regression and you'll get the results emailed to you. So the whole environment is very much automated that it will kick the test off by itself, execute the whole thing, capture the screenshots, create an email about the logs, failures, and everything, and you'll receive an email about how was the maintenance release testing happen on that specific maintenance release. And I think this web automation gets handy very well. Yeah, but there are so many uses of automation. If you look into medical devices, the amount of burden people have from performing B&B, it gets much shorter with automation.
Maybe it would have been better just to ask, is there any reason that you wouldn't automate? That would have been a shorter conversation.
There are reasons. For example, in some manner, I think you cannot mimic the behavior how human would interact with the device. In those cases, you will have to, in medical, like for example, in a tech company, you can say my test suite is 100% automated. In any medical device company, you go and ask, is everything as automated? Nobody's going to say yes, because it will be not more than 95% in most of the cases, because the 5% remaining is a lot of the test cases are dependent on human behavior, and those cannot be automated. So I guess you have like a place where you will say that you will not be able to automate these things.
All right, Tanvir has put the gauntlet challenge out to Claude and ChatGPT. There you go. Can you mimic that last 5%? Love it. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Topic number 2, just building your own automation framework. Based on the slide here, we've got a couple of different choices. Maybe this time, or Brian, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about the differences here and your thoughts on it?
Sure. Yeah, what's great. You think about what's available now to us versus what was available 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, we had to, at Boston Scientific, we had to build everything really in-house. But with when 20 years ago, it was the beginning of really open source distribution online. And then also companies were beginning to embrace Java. And so with those technologies and web browsers, and so with those technologies, a lot of standardization and open source off-the-shelf libraries became available, and a lot of common techniques developed for user interface layouts, and then being able to automatically control user interface layouts. And so it's actually, when you compare it to 20 years ago, it's really amazing how much we had to build in-house back then, and how much is available off the shelf versus how much is available off the shelf now. Still, even today, we're designing custom hardware when you build medical devices. And so there's still an element of needing to build some of that in-house just to be able to control the hardware. I remember a few years back, we actually, just because we needed to do some algorithm testing, and the way at that time, the way we designed the software, we hadn't designed it to separate out the algorithm from the rest of the firmware code. So we ended up actually building an emulator to run the firmware code so that we could run it faster than real time in order to test all the ECG waveforms. So just an example of how sometimes you have to build some things in-house. I mean, in addition to that, in addition to the emulator, there was all the support interfaces to DACs and or In this case, DAC can mean actually digital analog converter. DAC also can mean digital acquisition or signal acquisition. So we had to put the signals into the device in order to run through the algorithm, and then we have to take that data, and we have a whole tool suite around that to process the data and evaluate the results. So when I think that ultimately, I guess I really am talking about how hybrid is really indispensable, because there's we have custom hardware. There's pieces we have to build in-house to serve that hardware, but largely, especially on the software parts of it, especially web software, app software, there's a lot of off the shelf that we're able to take advantage of today, and I mean, really, we've had a great ecosystem over the last 10 years, and it just keeps getting better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the hybrid approach is the best way to go forward from the experience I have seen in Medtronic, especially because if you decide, I think some companies in Medtronic, for example, decided to go everything in-house. Uh, what that why that didn't work out, just because people work on some in-house frameworks or architectural stuff, which they take it with them when they leave, because the amount of information they carry is like from the scratch. They have worked on it. It's like their baby project. They were working on it and they were supporting it through the whole Medtronic journey. And then they leave and they give minimal or as much as knowledge transfer they can possibly, but that's not enough. People will still fall into the loop holes of facing a lot of issues, trying to maintain it, or trying to keep it compliant to the FDA regulatories. In that case, like in-house build architectural stuff is good until that person wants to stay for the longest possible way.
Right.
And is you cannot use everything off the shelf as well, because the dependency on those products off of the shelf is also pretty high. If, for example, we had an issue when I was working with CRM some time ago. Appium is an open source project, open source tool. So the people are willingly working on it. So Appium needs to support new iOS versions. And when Appium moved from 1.0 to 2.0, it removed a lot of libraries from there. And the libraries which we needed, but Appium decided to remove them because Appium said that it can be covered by these libraries. So like the dependency on Appium caused us to create our own Appium type of tooling, which could help us to communicate with iOS devices. So we had to work on a debug bridge, which could send commands to the iOS device to perform actions, all the UI actions and everything. And that created another problem, that the person who created that debug bridge project decided to leave Medtronic. So the support for that project was also gone. So I guess you see that you cannot completely go off the shelf because the dependency is higher. You cannot go completely build in-house, because if the person takes the information with him, that's not even hard to maintain afterwards. So a hybrid approach will go for long because you have some dependencies, but you have your architectural work well-defined, well-documented, and well-maintained. And the knowledge is not with one person, it's with the team. If somebody leaves, the team will continue maintaining the project. So I think that's the way forward, especially when you talk about the medical devices, because not anything off the shelf will help you to automate the devices, specifically like Brian mentioned. You have to create your own projects to communicate with the device, to feed the data which you want to test on it. So all marking any type of behavior on the device, you will have to have something in-house for sure when you talk about medical device industry.
No, I think Tanvir brings up a really great point there. Sorry, Brian, were you going to say something?
Well, yeah, I was going to add to that. I mean, the discussion of Appium, brings up another interesting discussion around validation, which actually I notice is the the last line in the hybrid, the last bullet in the hybrid approach box. And when we have to build, so I mean, in that story of Appium, they had to build some components in-house, which then that requires, they used to be part of Appium, but now they've got to move them in-house. So they've got to validate those internally. And I mean, and that's true with anything you build internally, you've got to do the validation. It's also true though with the off the shelf, you have to validate that. Oftentimes though, it's easier to validate the off the shelf software because it already has its standardized use cases and um, I just find that validation effort to be a little easier than, or a little less uh, involved than having to validate the custom in-house build.
I agree.
That's a great point. I think there's definitely some pitfalls that we see. If you use off the shelf stuff, then you might be stuck with that particular vendor. If you build something in-house, you could be stuck with a person. And just a shout out to Jim Heimerl. He's somebody that had to take over some Oracle code for me in 1999. It was meant to just be a patch. He had to maintain it for 10 years, and I'm not a coder. I just have to say that 10 years that he had to unscramble my crappy code anyways. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I mean, there's not a bad decision. There's not a right decision here. I think it's just, trying to do something hybrid tries to get maybe tries to get the better of both worlds. So,
I agree.
this is the slide I've been looking forward to the most. Looking forward to hearing both your perspectives on automated testing for BLE and connected devices. I think this is probably the most specific thing to medical device, and really wanted to get both of your perspectives. Maybe Tanvir, we could have you kick this one off.
Sure. Yeah, that's the challenging part is that now our devices are wireless. And when it comes to wireless technology, things are not as stable as you think they would be. Like, it's not similar to how you connect your headphones. So medical devices adapting to BLE is a great thing to do. They used to use different algorithms previously, like different firmware versions of TEL-N or TEL-M. And I think some medical devices still use those protocols. But I think a lot of companies are moving towards BLE because it's more reliable, more secure, and it's easy to work with because all devices support it. And there has been like significant enhancements happening in the BLE sector as well. I think whatever the devices I have worked on so far, almost every one of them was BLE. So you could connect to the device through your cell phone or through an iPad. If you go to a clinic, the clinician will use an iPad to connect to the device to read the data and perform any sort of action you need to perform. For example, I was working on Alta Viva, which Medtronic just released recently, and there is also a BLE device. So if you want to manage your therapy, like stimulation, how much stimulation you need for your body, you can just basically connect it through an iOS app and perform actions on it. And it's like pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Medtronic has been working on multiple ways to connect a device. For example, we have been working on patient applications. We have been working on clinician applications or physician applications, you can call it. Whereas both the applications will have different interface and different limitations. So a physician will be able to explore or configure a device from scratch, like in a very different manner how a patient can access the device settings. You can do you can perform a lot of action using a patient application as well, but you cannot change the configurations of the stimulation of the therapy. But physician will be able to do. If you're not satisfied with the therapy you are receiving right now, you can reach out to the physician and they will be able to do it when you make a visit to the clinician. So the BLE made it much, much easier for all the devices to have the connection happen like with a snap of finger, basically. that helps in the manner of automation as well, because BLE is always broadcasting at a very low amount of frequency, and the amount of energy it is using to keep the broadcasting always enabled is so low that it can keep the device awake for a long time. Uh, for example, if I would like to connect to a device connected inserted in my body, and I would like to get like in it like visible into my application, I can just basically go and connect it to the patient application. Uh, the idea behind is that the frequency what the device is emitting will be always broadcasting frequency. And when you connect to it, then you will be making data changes, like the data transition or application changes. Then the device will work a little bit harder, apart from sending you stimulation therapy. So the battery will last for many years in that case. Previously, we used to have Telen who would need to be like awakened. It won't work. So Medtronic used to produce some devices like magnetized devices, which you will have to go behind the device to wake it up. Then only you'll be able to communicate with it to save the battery. Is to shut down the Telen command, Telen signals. If it stays awake, the battery will drain really fast. So that's one of the advantage of BLE. And having a BLE environment for automation is also much easier because it's always broadcasting. You can connect to it with secure manner. Obviously, being in Medtronic, being in medical device industry, you have to have every single communication is secure, and Bluetooth provides it. So that's also one of the great things about BLE.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I agree with all of that. Yeah. It's pretty common design. You could almost call it a design pattern. It's a pretty common design architecture with medical devices now. It's you've got your medical device communicating with BLE to a tablet or phone, and then having that sent up to a cloud backend for data storage and online access and clinician access. Um, and you have to test each of those points. You have the interface between the medical device and the tablet or phone, and that there's a communication protocol, and each of those um, messages, commands in the communication protocol have to be tested to make sure that they're operating properly and that they um, make the intended configuration changes or trigger the intended events. What's great about BLE is that you can, again, we start thinking about building in-house and off the shelf and how things have developed, in the uh, even going back 10 years, when we were maybe using Bluetooth Classic, some of the tooling available on computers, on desktops. I mean, I'm trying to think about years here too. So what year is it? 2026, and the iPhone came out in 2008. So it's actually even closer to like 20 years ago, when we had this world before mobile devices and which allowed for more standardization. But it just being able to write tools to test Bluetooth back then was a little harder. You had to create more off the shelf to do the testing. And before that, we didn't even have Bluetooth. We had, I worked on some of the first wireless, well, really the first wireless devices that were on the market at Boston Scientific. And, we had a custom stack there. So everything had to be built in-house to test with that. But now with BLE, there's lots of tools available. You can build a tool suite on a desktop PC to communicate with, to run automated test suites against the device. You can do the same on tablets to do automation and test against the like we've noted, Appium and the XCUI test for iOS, to do testing on the against the device. Um,
That's great. That sounds like it's definitely come a long way for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just in terms of time, I'm going to move us along here. Sorry to do that, but I did want to talk a little bit. You can't talk about automation with at least a little bit of AI. In I think there's a lot of different ways we can potentially use AI. Tanvir, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you guys are using it, either at Medtronic or other places that you've been.
Yeah, I think AI came in the last couple of years. That the boom happened like last 2 years, most probably in all the industries. Medtronic is trying to leverage it as like AI as much as possible. And now we're working on a lot of AI-based tools, which will do a lot of work. Like, for example, static power analysis was one of the things which we used to do using SonarQube. Now AI is taking over that. Like, for example, Medtronic has been working with GitHub Copilot to provide people licenses to use it to validate the code even before you merge it with develop, even before you create your merge request or pull request. So a lot of validations are happening. So AI have been very helpful in that manner for keeping us compliant, because you train your AI agent to be trained as a FDA compliance person, and then whatever you do, whatever you send, the AI will be testing your code against or testing your test procedures against the compliance, and will make sure that you are staying compliant. I mean, for sure, human factor needs to be there. So review process includes peer reviewers, but AI resolves a lot of like basic review comments, for example. Like if you talk about coding, AI will mention every single thing, whatever is a waste of memory, or there is a memory leak, or there's a security leak, or anything at all. So AI will point that out before it even goes for the review. You fix all of that based off of AI comments, and then you send it for review. Most of the reviews are pretty smooth afterwards, and the process become much simpler, much faster, and the development gets much faster. So Medtronic engineers are working with the AI, creating a lot of different tools to incorporate this new age AI thing into Medtronic work ethics. So everybody's adapting to those tools which we are working on. They are all built like in-house built tools. Uh, I think Medtronic at this moment is not leveraging any AI tool from other companies. We are using the LLMs provided by ChatGPT, for example, or Grok, or some other AI tools. But I think most of the AI tools, what we are working on, are inbuilt in-house. Uh, and yeah, the second, the validation track you see there is a real thing. You cannot take anything coded from AI and just put it into your code. That is against Medtronic policy. I think that's the policy almost every medical device company is having at this moment. Not just medical device company, any other companies. You cannot take any AI generated code and just use it as your development code. So the code development is still happening from an engineer perspective. The logical thinking and everything is still there, but the AI is like an assistant, for example. I am pretty sure that that is going to change in the coming days. AI will take over of a lot of coding, and people will be training AI to code for you in staying compliant for FDA approvals. But that is yet to come. At this moment, I think we are taking a slower pace towards AI, especially in Medtronic, because we don't know the unknowns of just leveraging the 100% AI at this moment. So that's what I would say about this slide.
Yeah, thanks, Tanvir. Brian, are you kind of seeing that as well on the outside, or what are you seeing as well?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, uh, the dream is spec what I think is right now we're starting to call spec driven development, where we create the spec and we have AI agents do the coding and do the test development. And outside of the medical device industry, um, they're really accelerating those, I don't know, agent loops to um, just write all software and tests automatically. Um, and there's some differing opinions on that. How much should be, how much should be vibe code, how much should be manually cleaned up. But there's new tools that drop every day. One that just dropped that has a humorous name is Ponytail, but it's focused on uh, changing sort of verbose code into uh, what they describe it as your senior level dev that replaces 100 lines of code with one obscure or one, maybe obscure is the wrong word, one expert command that uses the tools that's in there, one line of code. So you get these new tools that drop and focus things. In med devices, we're a little more careful because there's a patient health safety risk. Technologies are still new. We've seen lots of hallucinations, so the risks are real. Um,
Yeah.
the but but also, even when we manually write tests, we insist in medical device development, we insist on independent reviewers. So, I mean, it's not really too different having AI write the tests and then having humans review it. And they're really doing the same role as independent reviewers that we were doing even with manual development. The only difference is that you're the human running the AI. You don't. There's still an additional independent reviewer that would be required because you're responsible for the AI's code. Yeah, sure, it's like you're an independent reviewer of the AI, but you're responsible for that code, so you become the developer. So you still need to have another independent reviewer to review it. But I think the fundamental principle, I think the FDA is using the phrase human in the loop. So um, and part of that is that the phrase gets used when AI algorithms are implemented and making sure that there's a doctor or somebody that reviews the outcome of those algorithms. But I mean, you could use the phrase a little bit in this sense also that you've got your developers reviewing, just to say you've got your developers reviewing the code, you've got the human in the loop.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's ironically also how I am managing cell phones with my children. Human in the loop.
One more point I would like to add here is that I think last time we were having an audit, and I think the question raised that is FDA planning to use any AI to do the FDA verification? And the FDA, that specific audit engineer replied saying that they are working on some LLMs, which will be able to go through the documentation you will provide to them and try to find anything wrong or anything missing, any sort of testing missing, for example, any sort of coverage missing for any requirements and all. So they are planning also to use AI in future. So they are working on a really good like a tool for themselves. And I think that tool will be able to validate everything, whatever auditor will go through everything to validate if the device is good enough for human use or not, or like safe enough. So yet to come, but you will see that coming soon. So I think they will.
The battle of the AI. I love it.
Yeah.
The next topic we had was kind of making automation FDI compliant. I think this is a great segue right into sort of FDA compliance. Brian, did you want to maybe kick us off here?
Sure. Yeah, um, I mean, automated testing is code, software code. And we've touched on some of these topics already. But just like other software code, it has to comply with the regulations. 62304 is really the guiding standard on software. Um, Testing, so 62304 covers the entire software development lifecycle, and testing is part of that. And so there's sections of 62304 that are specific to testing. Um, but and I'm just thinking through. I was just putting together a software configuration management plan. Um, I mean, your automated test code is also software code, and so you're going to be managing that in version control um, and if needed, formal change requests, depending on the phase of your project.
Yeah.
Validation when you build stuff. We talked about this earlier. When you build your test tools in-house or even off the shelf, you got to validate that they're doing what you think they're doing. I mean, validation is how you know that it's working the way you expect it to. And then there's this idea of um, kind of from the process side, there's the IQ, OQ, PQ, which is installation qualification, operation qualification, and I think it's process qualification. Um, it's just the idea of, if you're setting up a software, have you installed it correctly? Um, it really comes from when they're from heavier equipment. Um, and have you installed this piece of equipment properly? Is it operating properly, and are you able to produce products off of it? But it's been adopted into some software processes, especially for like off-the-shelf tools where, have you installed this software? How do you know you have? Are you able to operate it properly? Is it producing the results that you want? Um, and then 21 CFR Part 11, usually usually we're using QMS tools that are uh, they have their own validation. Usually you have to kind of run the company has to also run the validation suite to show that the 21 CFR Part 11 is met. But those usually in those QMS tools, that's where that comes in, where you document sign-offs on document, at least in the development process, where you do document sign-offs on change management, on releases of design uh, history file documents, including test code and software code releases. So, and then traceability. Uh, we always want to make sure that our requirements are implemented. We trace those from requirements um, to sometimes to design, almost depending on the company, but requirements to test is really is what's required. Um, and so it's your automated test tools can help with that. Um, Usually, QMS tools provide some good, or QMS tools and or requirements management tools often provide a nice test test case tracker. So you can run your test, it'll record the results, and then map those automatically into your traceability matrix.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Brian, I didn't mean to interrupt. Tendria, I was just going to ask if there was some specific, things you were doing to, at Medtronic to make, the automation FDA compliant.
We do, yeah, I think whatever Brad mentioned is the same process, similar process what almost all the times in electronic follows as well. We make sure that we are following the 62304, 35101 for device based uh, releases. So we have to follow a different protocol if you have a device to release. For example, if you have not just the software, but you're releasing a whole mobile phone or like a remote control for your therapy, you'll have to follow a different protocol. But for software, yeah, 62304 is the way to go. In case of when you're releasing a remote, if there's a software involved, you'll have to follow both the protocols in that case. And yeah, you will have to do the tool validation for anything and everything, whatever you're working with. Make sure that the tool is method validated. Every single thing is working as expected. And the traceability, I wanted to bring one topic for the traceability matrix is, I think a lot of times what happens, so traceability takes a huge amount of time in Medtronic. Like you tracing every single thing, like from a requirement to system design to software design to test design, and then UI design, then the firmware designs, everything has to be traced, connected to each other. So to do good about that, we created an automated process to automate that part as well. So that's why another automation example, right? I think it comes very handy that you will provide a requirement. the tool will take the requirement, it will go trace the documents. You provide the documents links to it. It will trace 6 documents and it will connect every single thing together and will print out like a report for you that this requirement was mentioned in system design here. There's a software design available on this page. This design was written which has this much coverage for this requirement depending on this system design, and the UI design will have that. So Medtronic, a lot of like this is happening in my current team, for example. We have this connectivity available for our department where we just provide the requirement number or requirement actual requirement, and you get the report. So you'll provide all the requirements related to your product and will receive a huge report of like, I don't know, 300 pages, for example. And you submit that report to FDA after reviewing the report. And FDA usually do not have any questions about the traceability. But before we created this tool, we used to do it manually, and FDA would come back saying, where is the coverage for this requirement, for example? Where is it mentioned? So this is another way of making use of automation to keep us compliant with FDA as well. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of use of automation. You just have to know how to use it. But yeah,
I love
staying
it.
FDA compliant is the main thing. Automation involves coding. So you have to make sure that your code is up to date, following all the best practices or not, and you producing the correct reports or not.
I love it. Another value add for automation. Last topic of the day, just kind of looking at our six, or excuse me, our five different topics. I think there's a lot of great takeaways. I'd love to hear kind of from you guys, kind of one of your biggest takeaways from today, in terms of kind of what you think, anyone in the audience that's listening should really be taking away from today. Tanvir, I'll start it with you, and then we'll conclude with Brian.
Sure. My biggest takeaway from today's conversation would be to use a hybrid model instead of using anything off of the shelf. You can rely on a company, but not 100%. You will have to leverage some of the company provided like features and services, but at the end of the day, you are just using as a part of your system. Components have to be some inbuilt, some from the company, so they can keep supporting whatever you are taking a use of from them, and you still have some which you can use if something doesn't work out between you and your vendor. So always keep an eye for building something in-house and using something whatever is available on the market.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think that's a good one. I'll talk about another takeaway, which is automation testing is really vital. It's vital for development because it lets you know, it allows you to refactor your code, make sure that you haven't broken anything. And then that same idea makes it vital for verification testing. It's not just about speed, it's also about consistency, being able to run those same tests repeatedly. And it's also about predictability. You know that when you run the test, it's going to take a certain amount of time. And you can, if everything works, it's going to take that amount of time. There's not going to be any unexpected delays. If something breaks, quickly. So I think automated testing is indispensable in medical device development.
I love it.
Agree. I was talking with the assumption of that you are automating for sure. There is no
No, I think, hey, another one that we just talked about was the fact that you can even automate some of the process, like, traceability. I think that's a great takeaway too for those that haven't thought about that. I think that's a great, that was certainly my biggest takeaway out of this was, it's not just the code that you're building or the devices and the BLE, it's also the process can be automated too. So I thought that was a great nugget for those that are listening. Once again, I want to thank our two panelists, Brian and Tanvir, and just a tiny bit of me. And again, if you have any future needs, thank our sponsor, PulseForward. Any type of system engineers or devices that you need tested or engineers that you need, happy to help. Again, pulseforwardmed.com. And with that, we thank you until next time.
Thanks, everybody.
All right,
Thanks.
now we